Hello and welcome to another train simulator video. And I thought I'd do this one because the HST being 50 years old, or coming up to 50 years old, is gonna soon be retired on GWR services. So it's a sad day. However, it's about time for the replacement. It's a shame it's come in the form of the 801s. Also, the Class 175s from Transport for Wales will be making its way on services such as what we are operating today, which is the service from Bristol to Penzance. Today I've got this beautiful Sir Kenneth Grange liveried. This is locomotive 43002, and I've actually got a picture of this train travelling down the Dawlish seawall. Now, a few details to note. Yes, this is a Castle class train, or Castle class HST, with just 4 coaches, but the doors are the old style swing doors and not the newer style sliding doors. Anyway, we're going to jump back into the train cab and set off. We'll get the doors closed. Doors are closed. And our first stop will be Newton Abbot, so it's kind of a semi-fast service. We'll get the brakes charged. And we'll depart. I believe the door will automatically close anyway. That is a lovely horn, isn't it? So as I mentioned already at the platform, these trains will soon be replaced with class, well, they are currently semi-replaced with class 802 5-car sets, and also coming soon will be the class 175s that were off lease from from Transport for Wales about a year ago or so, and they've been sat in storage in Ely and were recently moved over for refurbishment so they can be run on services such as this from Bristol to Penzance, Cardiff to Penzance, etc. So I thought we'd take a slight nostalgia trip today on this morning service from Exeter to Plymouth on the Riviera Line. And I hope you guys enjoy. The cab views from here are incredible. So I will probably do this as a non-commentary, so you guys can enjoy the sights and the sounds of the HSTs, and something to remind ourselves of the past. This locomotive, Sir Kenneth Grange, locomotive 43002, was painted in the original Intercity colours to commemorate the 40th birthday of the HST. And there is a plaque on the side of the locomotive to commemorate this moment, as you can see here. 1975 to 2015. And as I said to you before, I have taken a picture of this train running alongside the Dawlish seawall, and that will probably most likely be the thumbnail on this particular video. So I hope you enjoy this cab ride. The HST honestly has one of the best cab views of any train in the UK, especially with its wide open windscreen, and it became a topic of conversation during the original prototype phase, where the driver was sat actually central, and there was a contention with the drivers' union, ASLEV, saying that there should be 2 drivers on these trains, or they say that 2 drivers or a second man in the cab of the train, and then therefore the cab was slightly redesigned, moved the seating position to the left hand side, and added a second seat, as you can see here. So I'm going to let you enjoy the sights and the sounds of the HST as we run along the Riviera Line to Plymouth. Now I hope you guys enjoy this one. As I say, I'm just going to do sights and sounds on this one, and I hope you enjoy. This is a morning run at 8 o'clock in the morning, winter time. So I'll leave you in peace for now, and I'll probably chime in at different points. as we approach cautionary signals and the arrival into Newton Abbot. The HST has been a fellow workhorse for the intercity services in and around the country, from here in the southwest all the way up to Scotland. And in fact, under intercity cross country and subsequently Virgin cross country and even cross country as we know it today, there were a few services with the HSTs running from Penzance to Aberdeen, the longest train service in the United Kingdom. From 1975 until now, 2025, we're now on the 50 years of the trains being in operation. GWR will shortly retire them once all the Class 175 Coradia units that were formerly run on Transport for Wales come into operation. I believe they are, in my opinion, very suitable replacements for the trains. As these trains are 50 years old, the Coradias are from the late 1990s, early 2000s. So we'll set the DRA, which is something that has been a recent conversion or recent addition to the cabs. The cabs have been more complicated over the years, including the addition of ATP here, which is unique to the GWR sets. The other HSTs don't have it, however, that's there. We also have DRA, which was fitted, and TPWS. Originally they were not fitted. And also this screen here, which I believe was a driver information screen for different things. I hope you enjoyed that cab ride along the seawall in the westbound direction. And as I say, already partially the HSTs have been replaced with 802s. Okay, we'll close the doors now that we got a green signal. And then naturally there would be a guard's buzzer, but no guard's buzzer on here. And it looks like is that snow or rain? Kind of looks a bit like rain, but I'm not too sure. Oh, it's snow. For some reason, the train simulator has decided to make it snow. That is a sound that will live with me forever. The sound of the suspension airbags on the Mark III coaches. The Mark III coaches were very advanced for their time, coming out in the early 1970s. They were fully air-conditioned coaches. And with advanced suspension to allow them to be more comfortable. And I'd have to say, they really aged well, the Mark IIIs, giving comfortable rides even at 125 miles per hour. So it'll be a sad day when GWR finally retires the last of the HST Castle classes, and the only surviving HST units being those that are up in Scotland on the Inter 7 city services. We hope that the well, I say we hope there is a replacement coming. However, it's currently under tender with ScotRail, so no decision has been made officially for the true replacement of the HST up in Scotland. As I said already, GWR has announced its replacement using Class 175s, which I think are pretty adequate replacements in my opinion. With a intercity layout, DMU services, I'm sure that they would be teaming them up so that because they come in 2-car and 3-car variants, and I'm sure that they would be teaming them up so that they have 5-car or 6-car configurations, especially during the summer months. And the beauty with those units, there is also operational flexibility to do such sets. For example, you could run a single set of 3-car or a single set of 2-car, or you could double them up, so you've got a 6-car or a 5-car, or in the case of the 2-car ones, you could have 4 cars, and even up to 6 cars with the 2-car variants. So I believe that it's a suitable replacement for GWR for services from Penzance to Bristol and Cardiff. as we're about 1 mile from Totnes, our next stop. We're slowing down as we had cautionary signal. We've also transitioned from autumn into winter because of the snow, which is something I find interesting about the weather engine on here as well. As we approach TBWS grills, we'll make sure we're below 20, which we are. So once we sight the signal, we can then proceed with either up to 45 miles per hour for the turn off into Totnes, or we stop. And we have a green signal, so we can open up and wheel spin. Lovely. So just let the train sort itself out. As we approach Totnes, and as I say, transitioning from autumn scene to a winter scene as we come to arrive at Totnes. The HST was only supposed to be a stopgap while the ATP program, the Advanced Passenger Train program, was under testing, and the HST was built, as I say, as a stopgap for a few years until the ATP program was complete. However, as history has told us, the ATP program failed and the HST reigned supreme on intercity services up until the early 2000s, when the first replacements from the Voyagers on Virgin started to take over where the HSTs had left off. Slowed down a bit too early there. I think we're still... No, we haven't fouled the points, but we're pretty much on the platform now. So you know what, we'll just stop here so we don't delay our train any further. As mentioned previously, the HST was brought in as a stopgap until the ATP program was to be completed. However, the ATP program failed and the HST reigned supreme. The HST came in this livery to start with this lovely red and blue, and it said Intercity 125 on the side of it. 125 being the top speed of these trains, which was 125 miles per hour. As the replacement for these trains is departing, we'll go back into the cockpit. The cab of the train. This particular locomotive, 43002, is currently sitting at the National Railway Museum in York, so you can go and visit Sir Kenneth Grange at any time. Now, why was the name Sir Kenneth Grange important to the HST? Now, Sir Kenneth Grange, who this train is named after, was the designer of the HST train, the locomotive. And to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the HST, this locomotive was specially painted in the original Intercity colours and was given the name Sir Kenneth Grange, and an additional nameplate was put on the side to commemorate the 40th year of the train running. Now, while searching for information about the HST Castle classes, these 4-car variants that were running on the West of England lines, like what we're doing today, I found that they were initially withdrawn in December of 2024. However, as you know from watching this video, this is November of 2025, which there is still a handful still operating. I believe they still had a small number operating because of the fact that they don't really have any stocks to replace it, and that's where in the summer of 2025 the announcement that GWR would be leasing the class 175s, the Coradia units, to run these services comes into play. And I believe they will be starting their services, or at least some services, by the end of this year at the next timetable change. However, no news, and we're talking now, I am recording this at the end of November, has come up about that at all, even amongst the forums. So we'll see what the future for the HST on GWR is, but it looks like the days are outnumbered. Now, the biggest modification made to the HSTs over the years is the power unit behind us. The engine being changed from the original Paxman Valentia engine, which had a distinctive screaming noise, which I can remember growing up hearing at Peterborough train station, with the GNER HSTs running with the screaming Valentias. One of my favourite sounds to this day, especially on the railways. It was tamed down and an MTU engine was fitted in the early 2000s, first experimented here on the GWR on the Great Western lines, and later rolled out onto almost all sets apart from the Midland sets. Midland sets ended up using the I think it's called the Paxman VP 185 engine, which does have a small scream to it, and if you are on Train Simulator World and you have the Midland mainline, you can hear that distinctive sound of the VP 185 on there. They are also distinctive in having 3 headlight cluster on the front as opposed to 2, which the MTU sets have. MTU sets have 2 light clusters on each side, one for the main bulb and one for the marker lights. Because of the new LED and because of the new LED lights, they produce a much brighter light, and therefore you can kind of integrate the, well, also with the LEDs you can integrate the tail lamps with the marker lights by adjusting the color of the LED bulbs. So that's why they only have a 2 light cluster. There's not much else more to say about the HSTs other than the fact that they have done the UK very proudly, and there was even an exported version sent to Australia for their XTP services. Let's get the letters correct. XTP services between from, I think it's from Melbourne to a few other places, including there was even a service from Melbourne to Sydney. Now we've got a 40-mile-an-hour temporary speed limit coming up. We just got an advance warning for that using a temporary AWS magnet. So we'll just slow the train down to 40. I have no idea where it is located, but temporary speed limits would be on the driver's notice boards at the depots for them to know. Now it's just appeared up in our top right hand corner, and I can see that we are probably about 0.8 of a mile from that particular temporary speed limit of 40 miles per hour. And I think personally, for the time, these trains were really well suited, especially for drivers with this brilliant view. There's our 40 mile an hour temporary speed limit. And here is our end of speed limit sign. So we'll accelerate now. Oh, lovely. Train sim world at its finest. It looks like we've got a texture glitch on our repaint. Yeah, we got a small texture glitch on our repaint, and now it's come out white. Oh, well, you got to see the texture, or the repaint anyway, so that is not a problem. It might be to do with the snow, and that's why it's decided to have a texture glitch, but I'm not too sure really. Anyway, I'll leave you to enjoy the cab view once again. As we arrive into the Plymouth area, we will shortly be concluding this video. To our right hand side is the Lyra TMD, where these trains, the Castle classes and the future Class 185s, are currently being maintained. And the days of the HSTs being maintained here at Lyra are shortly coming to an end. The HSTs are almost completely extinct in the British Railways network now, and it will be a sad day once all has gone. But they will live on. There are a handful of preserved HST locomotives and coaches in various places in the country, so there will be opportunities to ride on preserved railways and even on the main line, as there are some mainline certificated, or still some mainline certificated sets. Rail Adventure being one of the big companies that currently owns and operates a handful of HSTs for the purpose of rail tours. Of course, you still got the Blue Pullman, which I believe is still running. That is what it is. And there's a lineup of HSTs in Lyra over here. Here's the Lyra depot, just outside of Plymouth station. So just a few more minutes and we'll be arriving into Plymouth. And the end of this particular video. I hope you've enjoyed. So something a bit different, showing you pretty much the entire Riviera main line, or the entire Great Western main line from Exeter to Plymouth from the cab of a HST, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Got to add a bit more power, and then there should be a fall-in grade into the town, and then we're expecting to arrive on platform number 4 today. Just cut the power. And we got theatre indicator 4. 25-mile-an-hour limit is in place. Well, that's been a very interesting ride in the HST from Exeter to Plymouth through autumn to winter. I hope you've enjoyed that one, especially seeing the transition of the scenery from autumn scene to a fully snowy winter scene. DRA is set. Doors will open on the left side. And we're going to jump out of the cab. Well, thank you for joining me on this particular train.
St. Budo Ferry Road, Saltash, St. Germans, Liscard, Bodmin Parkway, Lostwithiam, Parr, St. Austell, Truro.
Shame about the textures of Sir Kenneth Grange.
St. Earth.
Oops, we'll just go back to free roam.
Penzance.
I don't know how long the train is going to sit here before departure. It does say 10 past on there, but that could be wrong. It might be departing now. So we'll see off the train and then we'll close off the video. So as I said, that has been the class 43 HST Sir Kenneth Grange 43002, the first production locomotive. Shame about the textures now. I think it might have been caused by the snow. After all, this is just a repaint from the Creators Club. And we'll see you off the train. And I hope you have a good one, and see you on another video. Thank you and goodbye.